With the Go Ashveil just being a day away in Honkai Star Rail 4.1, today I'm here with the should you or should you not summon for him. We're going to be going over his kit, his roles, all the stuff you really need to know about him, then talking about his future potential as he does have a quote-unquote future role that we do have a bit of info on, and then finally reasons why you should or should not summon. Stuck grinding in Honkai Star Rail? Need Stellar Jades fast? We've got you covered. Head over to U7 Buy, your ultimate gaming hub for save fast and cheap in-game top-ups. Whether it's Star Rail or your other favorite games, U7 delivers instantly and players love it. Check out their Trustpilot reviews, they're actually top ranked. On the Honkai Star Rail direct top-up page, you can recharge your account in seconds. For example, 8080 Ononeric shards cost $99.99 in the official store, but on U7 Buy, you can see here it's way cheaper. Just pick your server, enter UID, pay securely, and boom, your account is instantly loaded. Want extra savings? Use code PRETSR at checkout for 5% off, perfect for last minute pulls, battle passes, or surprising a friend. And here's a bonus. If you spend $80 a month on U7 Buy, you can grab the Honkai Star Rail Express Pass for only 1 cent, which is nearly free. Click on the link in my description, recharge fast, save more, and keep blazing those trails. So Ashveil himself is a lightning hunt DPS, so he is single target, but he also is a follow-up attack character. He's actually being able to be used as his own hyper carry DPS, which is going to be currently his best role, but you can use him on the follow-up team alongside Fei Xiao, where he is going to be best on that team. But Fei Xiao is unfortunately relatively outdated now, and so it's much better to just run him as his own hyper carry character. He performs much better at that at low cost, high cost, medium cost, everywhere. So he's also a very unique character that can literally defense shred the entire field by just having bait on the field, which is going to be always. And bait is just when you ever attack that enemy, you're able to give Ashveil more energy, you're able to launch his follow-up attack against him if he has the charges, and he does have relatively good multipliers still despite all the stuff that happened. But his main damage source is going to come from his ultimate and the enhanced follow-up attack. So when he launches his ultimate, he does a big attack that doesn't actually do like insane damage. It does damage, but not like insane damage. But then he does an enhanced version of his follow-up attack. It's the same animation, but then it comes down and then it consumes what is called Gluttony, which he is able to gain by either using his basic attack skill or just launching his follow-up attack. And every 4 stacks of Gluttony you do have will consume all of it to do an additional hit after his follow-up attack. So he has regular follow-up attacks, which you will be seeing anytime you do have a charge, and an ally attacks an enemy that is inflicted with bait, then he launches the follow-up attack, or if you use his ultimate and then he launches his enhanced follow-up attack right after the animation ends. As I did mention previously, he had defense shred, and that value is 40% just by bait existing, and bait will quite literally always exist, which makes it really strong. You practically just have a Pela ult that is just always active. Well, Pela's ult is always active technically too with the proper build, but that's besides the point, you know what I mean. So the entire way to play Ashveil is of course funneling him energy, as he's able to generate a energy anytime someone on the team hits the enemy with bait. So pairing him alongside with Tribute follow-up attacks is common, pairing him with RMC with their joint attack is common, Daunting Dragon attack is very good with him. You just want to have a lot of frequency to generate him energy to get his ultimate. And then of course building him Gluttony stacks is important, which they tie together because you need his ultimate to refresh his charges so he can have his follow-up attacks. His follow-up attacks generates him to Gluttony, and then his turns, they're not necessarily that important as opposed to allies attacking, but his skill is at least able to generate him to Gluttony, and his skill also gives him a skill point back, so he is SP neutral in that regard. On top of that, he is able to somewhat buff the team's damage outside of the defense shred. He does have a trace that makes every ally target deal 40% increased crit damage, and for follow-up attacks specifically, it's an additional 80%. So for follow-ups, it's 120% crit damage dealt, and for any other attack, it's 40%. So anyone on the team, when they crit, will do more damage. If their follow-up attack character that sees more benefits is someone like Daunting Dragon or Tribute especially, they will be doing even more damage. On top of that, the more Gluttony stacks that Ashveil does hold is going to further increase his damage. So realistically, you save all the Gluttony stuff for at least having around 3 extra procs, so you need for a 12, which 12 would be his max, which also isn't necessarily hard to get, especially on his better teams. And every stack he does have is going to increase his follow-up attack damage dealt by 10%. So the more you have, not only are you getting the extra hit every time you do consume 4 in his ultimate, but you also are getting 10% per Gluttony stack thanks to his A4. So his potential as both the sub DPS on a follow-up team and just a main DPS in general, and honestly even sub DPSs outside of some teams, as long as they have good frequency, like you can really use them on like an Archer sub DPS team, you can use them as an Anaxa sub DPS, as long as they have good frequency and somewhat a good synergy in that regard. You can very much use Ashveil as a sub DPS, as he is relatively universal thanks to his defense shred, but then if you want to do the crit stuff, then of course it would only be applying to characters that could crit. Other than that, the only real requirement for him to actually prosper is going to be higher frequency attacks. So as a main DPS, his potential is very good. He's able to low cost clear, he's able to high cost clear. Unfortunately, his vertical itself is not that great, but he's still very much able to clear and clear pretty well at that. And then as a sub DPS, his main thing is going to be on a future team, which now brings me to the next segment of this video. With him, he's kind of more of a future rail character, as he kind of is a character that you could really just entirely ignore and it won't necessarily impact you. Since while he is strong as a hyper carry, it's not going to be insane levels. Like, he's still weaker than 3.x hyper carries. Like, he's not as strong as the full proper Archer team. He's not as strong as a full proper Anoxa team. He's not as strong as a Finon team, so on and so forth. He's just good, like really good still, but just not like that level of them. So in that regard, if you already had these teams kind of built, you can kind of ignore him until his future team comes. So this is more just grain of salt info, because of course we have no actual full-on confirmation yet. But it seems like Ashveil is a sub DPS that is his main focus role for a future team. And supposedly the character he's going to mainly be functioning aside is not actually coming out for a little while. So there is a good chance that if you were to pull him and then you were to decide to stop using him as a main hyper carry, there's a chance he might literally just collect dust in your box for a little while. So he might actually be the definition of a good rerun character for most players looking to maximize their Jade usage. So that is actually something to very much consider, that his main role is said to be a sub DPS. While he can still function as a sub DPS on existing teams, the one where he quote unquote revives is not actually a revive, as Fei Xiao is just relatively weak now. So on that team, it's not really considered. And then on teams where he can be a sub DPS, again, Archer, Anoxa, so on, the best teams for them is not going to have him. Like, those teams still could be benefited much better with the other teams that they currently have existing. So that's more of a, I don't really have any other options, so I'm going to put him there. While he does work, there are still better options to do on them. So he's not actually a sub DPS for this team. That is not the main role. And then his hyper carry stuff is just coming up from the fact that he is still strong enough to be ran as a hyper carry. So that is going to be the main held up role until he starts getting his other teammates in the future. So he is, again, more of a future rail character, as he is leaning towards more being a sub DPS that has the capabilities to be a main DPS, but in the future he's going to get a full team where he functions alongside a main DPS properly. So when you are considering him, definitely keep that in mind, as it is a very, very important factor, especially in a game like Starro. And finally, reasons why you should or should not summon. As he's a DPS, one of the biggest roles you should consider is the fact you are in need of a DPS. Ashveil is actually quite a flexible DPS. He can work great with characters like Ting Yun. He works fantastic with very popular characters like Sunday, Sparkle, RMC, Tribby, Permanentary Donna. He works with a lot of popular characters. So there is a good chance that really any account that is not just brand new is going to have a combination of a team they can run for him, as the team samples for him is relatively generic. It's usually like him, Action Advancer, at least in a consistent margin or not. Like, you can use in that slot, RMC is usually the best. You can do a -1 setup with Sunday. You can do a hyper speed Sparkle, base speed Ashveil. Third slot goes to another support that does have some form of attacking, so Tribby, so you can funnel energy. And then the last slot goes to a sustain that can attack, so someone like Danang Permanentary or even Aventurian. So his team variety is actually quite good. So if you are in need of a DPS, he actually is a relatively strong suit. He actually performs quite well on all game modes as well. And again, a big part of him is he has quite a few team options. Like, you have a lot of this variety. Like, you can use RMC, Sparkle, or Sunday. You can use Tribby, you can use Ting Yun. There's going to be future characters that probably function as a sub DPS. As long as they have frequency and debuffs that do benefit him, he can work there. So he just is a relatively good DPS to pick up. So if you're in need of a DPS, specifically a lightning DPS, he actually is a good option. If you're someone that still does actively use Fei Xiao, maybe you just have like a high Fei Xiao invested in team, like you have E2 Fei Xiao with Cypher, Avenger, and Robin, so on. In that case, you can very much want to pull Ashveil, because he is going to be best in slot for that team. So anyone actually still running Fei Xiao, you're going to want to pick up Ashveil, as he is the best in slot for that Fei Xiao team. And then reasons why you should not summon is the opposite. If you don't run Fei Xiao and you don't really have a need for a main DPS, then you shouldn't necessarily consider. I also really wouldn't necessarily recommend him to people that want to run him as a sub DPS on teams like Archer or Anoxa. At that case, just invest in their current teams. Invest into something like Archer E1, Sparkle E2 instead. For Anoxa, invest into just getting Cyrene E2, Saridra E1, so on and so forth. There's just better options on those teams. While he does work, he is not going to be the best, and is mainly just like, hey, I have this character, maybe you're running him as a main DPS for a while, I'm going to use him as a sub DPS because I need to use said other character on a different team. I wouldn't really recommend picking up Ashveil for a sub DPS on those teams. Just a whale with expendable income, in which case I don't even know why you'd be watching this video. But yeah, if you aren't really in need of a DPS and you especially don't run Fei Xiao still, then those would be the main reasons to not really want to pick him up. And if you're specifically in the margin, I'm going to section this its own thing. If you are looking forward to his future team, as much as I love Ashveil and think he's actually a really solid unit that's going to be slept on, I definitely think he's a character you should wait for the rerun for. Since his DPS is supposedly not coming out for a while, there is a chance that you probably could very much just use the summons anywhere else, and 4.2 probably going to be a brutal update. It's probably better to just save for that, at least the reruns. And since by the time his actual DPS came out, he might have rerun once or maybe even twice. So once we get more info on that future quote-unquote team, even if it's like another character just on that team, then you can be like, yeah, I'm going to pick him up on maybe his first or second rerun in that case. There's of course the chance he gets sent into the Shadow Realm and doesn't rerun for a while. They haven't necessarily done that in a minute. Last time was just Rappa, and then Ratio happened to get it once. Everyone else has rerun at a pretty good output. So it's safe to assume that he probably will rerun. So yeah, if you're specifically looking into that future team, but you're a bit iffy and that's why you're watching this video, I would honestly recommend just waiting for a rerun. It's probably going to do you more better than harm. So if you're mainly picking him up for that future team, I would just recommend waiting for a rerun. Like, as good as he can be, if that's actually your specific goal for him, you're going to be having him and then he's going to collect us for a while. So I really would just recommend waiting and then plan your pulls accordingly. Anyway, that is it for the video. That is the should you or should you not summon for Ashveil. I do hope you found this video helpful. If you did, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn on the button for future videos like this, along with all other types of style content, and I'll see you later. Peace out.